righty. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. My name is Jenelle Riley. I'm an editor at Variety. I'm so happy to welcome you to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation business conversation with Ramy Youssef. He is, of course, the creator, director, writer, and star of the acclaimed Hulu series, Ramy. Yes, that you just saw. He has, of course, been earning raves for his work on the show, which has already been picked up for a second season. And his HBO special Feelings will premiere on June 29th. Please welcome Ramy Youssef.
Hey, everyone. Thank you guys for coming out. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Congratulations on such an achievement in so many ways. But before we get to that, I like to go back to the beginning because this is an audience of SAG actors and ask, how did you get your SAG card?
Oh, I'm trying to think. They call you a bunch.
That's when you're not paying.
Yeah, they tell you have to pay. And they're like, "Why haven't you paid yet? You can't work today." And then you're on the phone yelling your credit card number in the back of a set so that they can process the charge. I think I was I did like a small. It was actually really cool. The first thing I ever did on TV was this like small role on this MTV show, and it was a one-liner, but I ended up getting cast in a scene with my best friend. Like my best comedy friend at the time, my friend Josh, who was like now actually in my writer's room for season 2. It's really cool. So the first thing I did was with him, and then we like improvised a bunch. So it went from like one line to like a scene. Really? And I remember like leaving the set and being like, oh my God, I only had one line in the script. And then it became this whole scene. And then probably about like 10 minutes later, I was on the subway and I was like, oh, that whole thing's going to get cut. Like there's no way any of that makes it. Yeah. And so I just didn't make the show at all because, because the riff got too intricate. So they couldn't even pull one part out of it. So I wasn't even in it. But the great thing was that casting director, it was really interesting because he had cast me off of a one-line audition. It was literally like I walked in. My one line was like, "Is that her?" And then he went, "Wow!" And then
wait, say it again.
Literally, yeah, it was insane. No, he didn't even make me say it again. He literally just went, "Oh yeah," and then I got the thing, and then I didn't get in it. And then a couple months later, he called me and he was like, "Hey, there's this role you got to read." And it was a role written for a guy who is in his early 40s and is like an aging PA on a set. And I got the thing and he was like, don't worry about that. I think you'll have a good read on it. And this guy, again, only knows me from that one audition, brought me in and I ended up booking it and it ended up getting picked up. And that's how I got my SAG card. It was the second job I did, but it was a series regular role that moved me to LA. And this amazing casting director, Mark Hirschfeld, he just like saw me do one thing and he was like, I want you to come and do this. And so it was weird. I don't think that obviously that's not like the thing that happens, but what was exciting about it was that it was such an inconsequential audition. Yeah. It's like the kind of thing that like I feel like I would like easily look at and be like, I'm not going to go to that or something like that. And then it ended up creating this really cool relationship.
And was that the Nickelodeon show with Scott Baio?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that went for like 3 years, didn't it?
It went for 3 seasons, but we did it in, I think we did 3 seasons in like just over 2 years.
Wow.
Because they didn't want the kids to get too tall. That's what happens when kids are on a show. People race against nature.
That's hilarious.
Which is actually all of acting, is racing against nature. It's not natural. Like, it's not a natural thing to do, but we do it.
I actually want to go back to the beginning because much like your character in the show, is it okay if I just say you?
Yeah, of course.
Specify it's a character. Yeah. You were born to immigrant parents and raised in New Jersey. How did you start to think that you might want to be in the entertainment business at all?
It was a tough thing to wrap my head around. I didn't really know anyone who had done it. Yeah. So I not even on an Arab level of like, I don't see any Arabs in the industry. I was just in New Jersey. I didn't see anyone in the industry. So that wasn't it just wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
Like, obviously I started going to New York to do improv jams, I think, when I was like 17. But before that, I was making things. I went to a high school that was so cool, and we got to make our own stuff and learn how to edit and write and do all these things. And I did that with my best friends. And I did that with Steve, who's in our show. I don't think he was in one of the episodes we played tonight. But
no, he's in 8, right before this one.
Yeah, he's in 8 right before this one. Okay, yeah. But we went to middle school, high school together, but we learned how to kind of like make things together. But I never saw it as being like a professional thing that I could do. I went to college for political science and economics, and then just realized I wasn't really very good at either. And then I dropped out, and then I went to an acting studio in New York, Esper Studio. But it was really out of. I was like, okay, I'll go to this acting studio, and then I'll go back to college. I still couldn't even really frame this will actually happen. But I was putting in the work. I just couldn't imagine that it would pan out. It just kind of came from following what I really wanted to be doing.
And because I keep thinking that your parents must be exactly like the parents in the show.
No.
Okay.
No.
But how did they react when you said you were leaving college to pursue acting?
I mean, I always tell this story, but it was just, I mean, my mom really wanted me to be a lawyer, to like, even when I booked that, Nickelodeon show, she was like, that's amazing. You're going to meet so many actors. Then, you could become a lawyer for actors. Like, she was like wanting me to negotiate people's deals and stuff.
Is she still dreaming that dream? Or?
No, it was cool because they came to watch. We were shooting at Paramount Pictures.
Right.
And so when they came out and they saw Paramount, they were like, oh, okay, we get it. And I was just like so happy we weren't at like Gower or something, because then they would have been like, we got to get him out of here. We might have to get him into rehab. Just if they saw Hollywood Center Studios, they would have shuddered. So it was cool. They got it. It was exciting. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
So you came out here, and I don't think you really knew anybody, or
No.
Were you doing stand-up at that point?
A little bit. I went to school in Newark, and we had a little theater, and at the time I was doing sketch comedy stuff, and stand-up seemed really intimidating to me, so I would go to New York, and I would meet people who were doing stand-up, and I would convince them to come to Newark so that I could like host a show, and then I would kind of go around the halls at school and get people to come and be like, hey, you guys want to come watch comedy or whatever. And so we would start these shows, and comics would come from the city and perform to like 12 college kids, and they'd be like, I thought you said this was a show, and there'd be a lot of tension. But it was cool. I think back to those days, it was really fun. I did so many of those shows. I would kind of get people. I would do it, a couple times a month, if not more, whenever we could. We just kind of had like one of those programs, and it was cool doing it to so few people, because I like to do stand up really conversationally. That's kind of the style that I have, and it's really because most of my time starting it was just a conversation. There really wasn't an audience. There were 7 people, and so but I really enjoyed that. But it was when I got here is when I really started going to the clubs and kind of starting to really pursue it in a real way.
Who were some of your influences on your comedy style? Because it's a very specific, in some ways it's very conversational, but then you also have these like really intricate jokes in your show that it's like when I was telling him, when I try to explain his jokes to people, I just get blank stares. But I'm like, I swear it's funny when he does it.
Sometimes I get the blank stares. Yeah, it goes both ways. I mean, on the stand-up front, I was kind of watching a bunch of everything, but I remember at a really early age, my uncle, everyone, you have like that uncle that shows you stuff you're not supposed to look at. And he was showing me Carlin when I was like 10.
Wow.
And so that was, I think my earliest inception of comedy was that it should be thoughtful. Not that stylistically it's influenced me so much, but more that it should be about something. At a very early age, that's what I thought comedy was. And so, and he was really good at making it about something, but kind of, still being angry and still kind of being, himself. And so that probably was really influential. And then like music is also really influential. Like I think just like, it all, I always feel like we all wanted to be musicians, and then we were like, maybe we'll just talk.
Do you actually play any instruments or sing?
I play enough acoustic guitar to like, deal with a crush, but no, like it's not. It's just a couple chords, like at a party towards the end.
For 7 people.
Yeah. That's my demo. Yeah.
And when you were growing up and you were thinking about, getting into acting, what sort of representation were you seeing? What sort of roles did you think you would be playing? Or did you not think about it?
Yeah, because I wasn't so much thinking, because again, it felt, I don't know, in terms of Arabs being in anything, genuinely, I think it was Aladdin was all there was. I don't think that there was, I don't even remember the negative stereotypes so much either. Like, I just remember not feeling like there was a presence, and so therefore not really a space. And then when I started acting and kind of getting into it, that was also kind of hard for me too, because I never really, like, again, the thing that I booked was written for someone totally different. So essentially they were just like, we like you. But I never really, the auditioning game is so brutal. It's really hard to find what space you're going to be in, because I would kind of go in for like the lead or something, and they'd be like, well, you're not a lead. And then I would go in for the the sidekick, and they're like, well, I mean, you're kind of handsome. Like, they wouldn't, like, there was no there's like no space. And then it's like, oh, Ramy Youssef, he's Arab. And then every audition I got was for an Indian man, and then I'd come in and they'd be like, what's going on, like, why we thought you were going to have an accent. And then I would go in for like the Arab terrorist stuff. I would I would go in for it, and then they would be like, yeah, we don't buy it, which is so horrifying when you're like down to sell your people out, and they're like, we don't believe it, we don't think you really want death to America. And I'm like, no, I do. And they're like, just leave. And I'm like, all right. So that's tough.
We actually have a question from the audience. And again, I apologize if I butcher anyone's name. Mina?
Yeah.
Oh, hi. With the success of Ramy and increasing Egyptian representation in Hollywood, what direction do you think new Egyptian artists and storytellers should strive for?
Whatever direction, I think, is what's exciting. I think we're getting, hopefully, I mean, maybe with this show, maybe there'll be one. I mean, I'm excited to see one that follows a woman, who has a different story that is Arab, Muslim. But hopefully what's really exciting is that we can get past exposition and we can just start making whatever we want to make and kind of have the liberty to be weird. And it's because it's interesting. A lot of the critique I've gotten from the show, let's say, like, from whether it be from my own community or is almost that when you dig down to it, they're almost like, well, this is too weird. We just kind of wanted the basics first, because we have so little representation. It's like, well, why did you go that way, or why did you do this? And I think, hopefully we can kind of get past exposition and we can kind of just jump into exactly what it is that we want to do. Because I think for other stories, there were so many years of traditional sitcoms. And then, even for, let's say, like, Black families had, pretty standard, solid stories that just kind of humanized. And then you get Atlanta, and then you get to have like this cool weird thing, or however many shows, and you get to have Louis, you get to have Adult Swim, which is just a whole channel of people doing stuff that feels illegal. I mean, it's weird, and so hopefully we get the right to do that, and yeah, like, just to have just weird people, like Arab Tim and Eric, like, why not? Like that would be amazing to just have just bizarre, be able to step into those spaces and not have everything need to sit in, being important.
I was, sure. Oh, no, sorry. Stepped on your applause, I'm sorry. The worst thing you can do to someone is step on their applause. I was reading that there was an executive at Hulu who said when you came in to pitch Ramy, it was like the most complete, realized, ready to go pitch she heard, and she was kind of surprised because that doesn't usually happen. I mean, how long had you been thinking about this?
So much of it was based on the stand-up that I've been doing for a really long time, and I think that with the pitch, it was just putting everything into it, and it's interesting because you would think that's what happens every time someone pitches a show, but it's not. I mean, the reality is you get a show on the air, and then, you make more, you pitch more, and I just see it. I see people who pitch shows and they're like, oh yeah, I got to think about that pitch tomorrow, and I'm gonna go in and pitch it. So I think part of it is like the culture of Hollywood is just like people are just kind of going in and spitballing and whatever, which is cool and it's fine. But for me, I was like, this is all I have.
Yeah.
It was a very personal story that I felt like I really wanted to tell. There was not a lot going on in my bank account, and so it's just kind of this blend of things where you go in and you're like, yeah, we put it all on the line, but it truly it's about it being about something.
Yeah.
That's the thing that was really important to me. And again, not that everything has to sit in this massive importance, but the reality of the landscape is there were things we wanted to talk about from a certain point of view that I think were caught their ear, and it's not even the things you would think, I mean, because it's like, yes, it's the first Arab Muslim family that we're going to see with this much screen time, but it wasn't even that. It was even like, what does it look like to have somebody who's in their mid-20s, almost 30, whatever, kind of grow up in this culture and still have spiritual aspirations, and be someone of faith, but who understands the conflicts on both sides and is trying to synthesize instead of erase. And so I think we're looking at it from like a cultural perspective. So much of the pitch for me was, you usually kind of see a young brown guy and he's like crying, and you're like, why are you crying? And he's like, I want to go to the dance. And it's not, and my mom and whatever, and he's like upset with his parents. And so it was about taking it from this idea of I need to erase everything about where I come from, and not doing that, and kind of being like, no, I love where I come from, and I also love where I'm at, and I want to be in both places, and you don't really have to be Muslim to feel that. And so I think with the pitch, that was a big part of it, which was, this is going to be really specific. This is going to be maybe the most specific we've gotten to yet about this type of culture, which is a very low bar. But on top of that, this is going to be about something that I think everyone goes through on a human level. And so a lot of the pitch was making sure to like weave between those and not rest on just it being the first or whatever, which is something that really bothers me, and not resting on that.
Yeah, you wrote an article actually for the Hollywood Reporter that I think came out today.
Yeah.
About putting all this pressure on being the first Muslim family depicted on TV, and how that's a double-edged sword.
Yeah. I mean, and it's hard to say, because it the first thing is weird because you don't know, even because it could, everyone's like, you're the first Muslim doing this and that. You don't really know. I mean, like if you look back, you don't know who was Muslim just because they weren't saying it. I mean, like a lot of times people are Muslim and they don't talk about it.
Yeah.
We had a president who did that. So it's you don't know, so I'm not going to say who was Muslim or who wasn't.
It's totally Trump, right?
Yeah, Trump doesn't drink or eat bacon. But it's a strange weight to put on something, and it's something that has, I don't shy away from it. I'm fine with it. I mean, it's part of the fuel of the positive press. So I don't begrudge anyone who has problems with the show or wants more from the show, because the show is being touted a certain way. It's not the way that I would choose to tout it, but that is what's happening. So I totally respect all of the criticism that comes at that proclamation of what it is, but it's really about letting something just be what it is, and knowing that there could be more chances, and not operating from scarcity. There's 3 other streaming platforms opening up this year.
Wow.
These people want to buy things. Like, it's not like Hollywood is this place that is saying no. An executive is looking for, literally, I don't say this belittlingly, a street performer with the right idea. Like if an executive was walking through Times Square and thought they could build a show around that guy, they would. And so it's really about having something clear to say and being prepared, and that should be specific. It shouldn't try to represent your whole community. It shouldn't try to take on all that weight, because it's not fair, right? So for me to like try and tell all of the Arab Muslim women's stories. For me to try and tell a black Muslim story, not only is it bizarre because I'm not that, but then I don't let them get that chance. Mm-hmm. So the only thing I can do with my chance is be fully me so that someone else can be fully them. And so that is, I think, the way to process it and the way to go with it. And so that piece was a little bit about that, about getting into that. Yeah.
If it were up to you, how would you tout this show?
I would lead with kind of what I was just talking about with the spirituality being aspirational. Because it's not even specific to religion. It's more just about having spiritual aspirations, which I think can fit into a lot of different ways of thinking and thought. And it's just about being, in the present moment, being here, looking at what's around and kind of knowing, no, I know there's more. And that's really where this character is looking. He's kind of not, he's looking up. He's not looking left, right, Republican, Democrat, whatever. He's kind of like, who am I and what are the consequences to the things that I do? And that to me is the most exciting thing about the show, because you get into the genuine spirituality of it, and then I'm excited as we move forward to dig into the narcissism of that, because that is fucking egotistical too, and it's an excuse, and so ripping that apart and getting into that, and so the human condition stuff, that's what's really interesting.
I'm curious because obviously you found the right home for the show, but when you were out there pitching, were there people who said, we're interested, but maybe not so many subtitles, or, could he be half Muslim? Did you get much feedback that discouraged you, or was it actually pretty open?
I remember thinking about a show. This is where I'm going to give some not credit, but this is where just the reality of it, like, let's not pretend, when, Trump's in the White House, people start to be like, oh, wait, we need to be focusing on people in a real way. I remember talking about this show years ago, and everything was like, well, what if they live next to a white family? Or what if, someone gets adopted? It's like kind of like that kind of thing, or you got to be marrying into that. And, it's kind of, people are like, I need to get it. It needs to be in the context of my life. And then, you have a dude saying we need to ban Muslims, and then Hollywood's like, no, you can't ban them. Also, who are you? And just so we know who we're not banning. We'll get into it. And so it's part of that, that's, I don't spend a lot of time talking about him in the show. I think you actually witnessed the only conversation we have about him in the show. And I think he'd like it. He wouldn't get that he shouldn't like it. He'd be into it.
What is it like being in the writer's room or leading the writer's room, really? I mean, did you know specifically the stories you wanted to tell going in, or did you have to break them, which is kind of weird because you're sort of talking about your life?
Yeah. The stand-up special is coming out at the end of the
month. June 29th.
Yeah, it's coming out at the end of the month. When you see it, you'll see kind of, it's the bedrock for the season.
Really?
So much of the comedy in the special is dialogue for characters, is topically what we're talking about. So a lot of it was kind of, I remember bringing out the writer's room to watch me do my hour, and we kind of looked at it and we were kind of like, okay, this is, and there was a lot that's not in the stand-up that I wanted to cover. And so I kind of came in with, here are all the things I want to talk about. Here's how we're going to extrapolate them. And then I was very, very, very hands-on with the writing, obviously, and kind of, making sure that it sounded like me, and again, like a writer's room helps foster a lot of things. And then there's also another part of it where you need to kind of take it into your own hands to make sure it sounds like you. And so it's in that way, kind of like life. You meet all these people, but then you're in your own head, and you have to make your decisions. And so it was cool to have a really good collaborative group of people that understood what my goals were for the show, and then we just kind of keep shaping it around the stand-up and using the stand-up too to test things out as we were in the room, kind of like
handy.
Just thinking of something, weekend, go out, do a bunch of stand-up, and kind of come back on Monday and I riffed this thing out, this could work. When I say this one thing, people get really weird and silent, so let's put it in the show.
So that's good.
That's good. Let's make sure the uncle says that, that kind of thing. Yeah.
We actually have a question from the audience is it Naz? or Nas,
Sounds right.
wants to know, how did Jerrod Carmichael get involved? I know he's a producer on the show, and you toured with him, didn't you?
Yes, Jerrod. Yeah. I met him through our other creator, Ari. And yeah, we toured doing stand up together, but also just, were friends for a while. And then I think as, he was seeing my stand up, and A24 produced the Carmichael show, and they had seen me open for him. And so it kind of just became a very organic conversation of, oh, there's stuff, because like I said, a lot of the show is based on the stand up. So there was just a convo of, cool, we could kind of shape this, and it really grew from there.
What is it like as, someone who went through, well, I'm assuming they were bad auditions, but maybe not. I mean, you said, there was some pigeonholing of roles, but you also booked 2 jobs off of one line. So I don't know, maybe auditioning wasn't tough for you.
It was a lot of, I don't know, I guess you hear it all the time. It's a lot of no, and then you get one thing. So it's kind of a volume game on one level, but it's never what you think it is. I remember doing the series, and then it ended, and then I was like, cool, I just did a series. I just did 55 episodes of a show, and you go into an audition room and nobody gives a fuck at all. You can't even get in the room. They're like, what? I didn't see it. Like it doesn't matter. Like, it's like you think, I remember like leaving that show and being like, oh man, next pilot season is going to be crazy. And then pilot season ended, and I was like, I really need to do stand up. The only thing that might work is if I ambush people at a bar with my thoughts. That might be the only thing that gets me, alive, out alive. I think it was again. It was hard to. It's hard to find a type as an actor sometimes, and it's. I feel like it's what everyone says, but I don't know how I would live without making my own stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's and I gotta say, like, once you become a creator of a thing, a lot of the people you have in mind are people that you made stuff with. So it's like, I'll be honest. You make a show. Even within the show that's made, that has all these roles that are written, even of the written roles, there's a small portion that are auditionable, because you're kind of like, well, no, I wrote this for this guy. Mm-hmm. My best friend in the show I've known since 3rd grade. That's just the reality of it. So it's like, it's and that's not even to be discouraging. It's more about, I think it's actually encouraging, because it makes you feel like, okay, if I can get specific about what I should be playing and what I should be doing, and that's whether you're writing it or not. I mean, there's enough people in this town that you don't have to be the writer, but if you are, that's great. But knowing that if you do kind of find your click and you do kind of find your thing, it'll ride you for a bit, I mean, because people love each other and want to help each other when they come up together. And you see it in Hollywood, right? Like, you kind of just see the crews. You look at the Apatow and all those dudes, they're all in each other's things. You look at, Favreau and before, like, they're all in each other's things. So that's kind of, there's no mystery to how that works. But what's exciting now, again, is that it's so much cheaper to make things, but there's so many people who want to make things and buy things.
So what is it like, as someone who had to go through the audition process, to be on the other side of the table? I mean, are you super involved with the casting? And Oh, you are? Really?
Yeah.
I want to start with your parents on the show.
Yeah.
Because they're amazing.
Yeah.
And I know the woman who plays your mother is a very acclaimed actress.
Yama Bass, yeah.
I mean, in some ways, I'm like so impressed you got her.
Same. Honestly, same. It was crazy. So I went all over the world to try and find people to play my parents. I literally flew to Cairo and auditioned people for weeks, and came back with a bunch of audition tapes, but still not the right parents. What was really cool about those audition tapes was they kind of motivated us going to Cairo for the last 2 episodes.
Really?
Yeah, everyone in these episodes were people who had auditioned to play my parents.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so it was really exciting. So we kind of had all these tapes, and I was like, oh, cool, we're going to write it for this. We're going to write it for this guy, whatever. So it's really fun to call someone a year and a half later and be like, hey, we need you in December. It was really fun. Hiam, though, was on Succession. Is it Succession or Succession?
Succession.
Succession? All right, I believe you. So she, we didn't think we'd get her.
Yeah.
We didn't think we'd get her. We knew it's so hard to have someone be on 2 shows.
Yeah.
So we actually just borrowed her for the pilot. And so we were like, okay, we're going to try and get this picked up. So the pilot initially was shot with only one family scene with the parents, because we were like, we're gonna have to replace the mom, and the way it ended up working out is so funny. We ended up having to reshoot that scene, but we actually replaced the dad, and we ended up being able to keep Hiam, which was really cool. Like the schedules worked out, and HBO was really gracious to let us, have her be in the show, and then we ended up getting Amr Waked to play the dad, who at the time, who's like an Egyptian legend, and at the time he was not available for our first pilot, and then he ended up being available. So it really worked out in this really cool way to have these two people playing parents that are just like powerhouse actors. Really, really fun. And if you watch the whole season, we have an entire episode with Hiam that I'm not even in, and it's really. That this show, I think, really, really shines when I'm not in the episodes. Like that's when you're like, oh, this show is good, and she's really, really amazing.
It's funny you say that, because like the first thing I started to hear about the show was everyone said you have to watch the Strawberries episode.
Yeah,
and I was halfway through and I was like, well, where's the guy?
Yeah.
But it's a fantastic episode, and you got to cast a younger you.
Yes.
And you also directed that one,
yes.
correct?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Was that because you weren't in it? You sort of wanted to have your voice there? Your voice is in the show.
Yeah, but it was because I wasn't in it, it's really hard to direct in the first season when you're making a show. It's kind of rightfully so. I get it with the network, they don't want you to juggle too much, but that was kind of the easiest way to win that argument, which was I'm not in it, so I'm just gonna be at craft, getting fat or something. He's like, you say all these crazy things, and then and then they let you. It was really cool to be able to like dig into it and do that with him, and he was so amazing. That was one of those episodes
Fantastic
that like
actor.
He's a genius. I like can't take credit for that. I was watching him and just kind of would say one thing just because I knew where certain things had to go, but that was an episode that we auditioned a lot of people. We reached out to a lot of people, so a lot of people were very excited. 12-year-old boy, Arab boy, and you kind of hear from every Arab mom in the country. And then they read the script, and you hear from them, but you hear a much different thing. And they're like, "No way is my kid going to be in this."
In the 9/11 episode, basically.
9/11. Yeah, so it was tough to find the right person, and we got down to the wire, and then I remember seeing his tape, and within the first 10 seconds I was like, oh man, we're gonna get to shoot this episode. I was really excited. I didn't know if we could. It was such a tricky subject matter, and it was really amazing to find him.
His name is Alicia
Hennig. Yeah.
And I know he was on The Sinner. Had that come out yet?
That had come out, yeah.
Oh, okay, because he's fantastic.
He's great, and our casting person had found him and brought him in. Ramy Youssef had found him, and then, but it was funny because a couple months earlier, my sister was watching The Sinner, and she was like, "This kid looks like you. This little kid looks like you," and it was like a text. I was like, "Oh, ha ha ha!" But then, we found him, and I told my sister, I was like, "We found him," and she was like, "I told you about this shit, like." Like I already told you about it.
Having seen what he went through on The Sinner, and then on that episode of the show, I really hope he does a comedy, like a lighthearted rom-com next. But he's very good at being tortured.
He's amazing,
honestly. And you mentioned that you cast people like your friend Steven.
Yeah.
As Stevie, who I love that you let a guy in a wheelchair kind of be a horrible person.
Yeah.
Sort of like what you're saying about representation. Like it's honest to show that not everyone is a saint.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and it's been so cool to see people in so many people in the various communities that he's involved with. We're just so excited. And really happy to see someone, a character that wasn't being protected by the writing and wasn't being protected by the characters around him, and allowed to live and breathe and be awful.
Episode 8, he is so awful.
He's really it's really.
There's really nothing he doesn't do in that. He makes out with a teenager.
It's not good. No, it's but if you haven't seen it, it'll make sense. But it was really the reaction to it, and I think the look at, because it's not just even that episode. There's a scene where I have a conversation with his mom earlier in the season about how we all know he's gonna die, and like all this stuff, and it kind of goes to these places that I think people who have disabilities and their families don't get to watch their experience honestly like dived into and ridiculed even, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that's how we, you know, it's like a form of therapy to be able to just go in on something. I mean, there's literally a whole series of people roast battling each other, saying terrible things to each other. But it makes you, there's catharsis in it, and I feel like, you know, in my conversations with Steve, he was really frustrated that people in his condition never get that, you know, never get the opportunity to just be really dark and go to really dark places in an honest way. And so it was really, really fun to explore that with his character.
So you said, I got dark for you.
Yeah.
I wrote you a whole episode.
He'd read scripts and go, "Are you sure?" And I'd say, "Dude, you can just blame me. Say I made you."
I'm curious because you did make something that is very specific to you, but like you were saying, you also wanted it to have this universal appeal. And when this show came out, I mean, the first I heard about it was just the raves from the New York Times, from, you know, basically every critic. And could you have anticipated that? I mean, it was a really universal response.
No, I no, it's kind of hard to anticipate that.
Yeah.
It's.
You just hope you get seen, I think.
Yeah, you hope people see it, but also you really, like, something like this takes up your whole life in a way that it's weird because you're making a TV show, but you forget you're making it for people. Like, you're just in it. You're just making the thing, and you even forget it's just like you're like, oh, I got to make this date and I got to do this thing and we got to take the equipment from there and how can we make a date? You just forget, you forget. And we were so down to the wire. The cool thing about streaming is, I mean, it's cool and horrifying, but you're editing the show until a week and a half before people see it. So it was just like I finished it and then it was out. And so there was that kind of gap. Yeah. But also for me too, it's like I've been doing stand-up and comedy for a while, and this is an odd setup where my show came out then my stand-up special. It's kind of usually the other way around, where people are like, oh, the guy from stand-up, and then it's like, oh, it's Ramy, the guy. Where is he from? Like nobody, like there's no reference point, which is, really confusing for a marketing team, but also, it again, exciting that we get to do that now. I just had never really released anything publicly. Yeah. So these last couple of months have definitely been, very exciting, but I didn't even think about reviews, let alone, I mean, you want people to like it, but yeah, the volume and the what people have said has been really cool.
I think a lot of people became familiar with you when you appeared on Stephen Colbert.
Yeah.
You did a set that, so I guess, sort of went viral.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of the first little blip of it. Yeah.
Were you already making the show at that point?
Yeah, I was.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is, it's funny because a lot of people are like, oh, you did Colbert, then you got the show, and I was like, no,
that's what I assumed.
It was around the same time, actually. It was actually, we kind of had agreed to do it with Hulu. And that was an interesting jump too, because Hulu had not released Handmaid's Tale yet, so we didn't know what was happening over there. It was just green, and then and it was like not the green I would have chosen. And then they were like, no, we got this show coming out, it's gonna be amazing. And then it came out and it was amazing. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly I was like, no, this is the best shade of green. And then and so it was really exciting, kind of the way that it unfolded. Yeah.
I always think of that Saturday Night Live parody of The Handmaid's Tale when it's like, we got one.
Yeah, we got one. No, but you really just need one. Yeah. And it's so cool, 2 years later that
Look
came
at
in
their lineup.
And it feels really exciting. And then with this, and I actually think this like Disney stuff is like good news for it too. And so it's really exciting to be there. And making the show with them was so... Yeah. I really am so happy that we made that choice, because making it with them, they really let me make the show I wanted to make. Like when I watched the show, I was like watching it from the back there, and I was like just looking through things that they, notes we got or this or that, and some notes that we took that I'm happy we did, and some notes that we didn't have to take.
That's
that
great.
And it's really cool. It was just really a really supportive place to be.
It's so nice when people like their bosses.
Yeah.
It really is.
No, it's fun.
I want to take some questions from the audience.
Yeah.
There's a question from Adam. I don't want to butcher your last name. Oh, hey, Adam. How's your last name pronounced? That's what I would have said. Wants to know, as a Middle Eastern actor pursuing comedy myself, what advice would you give for bringing out a comedic persona when I sometimes feel my look pigeonholes me into playing villainous types? See, he can get those terrorist roles.
Yeah. I mean, it's from it again. It kind of just will come from writing your own stuff, and I think it's always like, whether it be, do you do stand up? Dipping in, yeah. I mean, whatever it is, I think you got to kind of like tell people how to look at you, and then I think whether it be in stand up or whatever it is that you're creating, it's always like the thing you're afraid of about yourself, or the thing that you're just afraid of in general. Just write about that. Just do the thing that you think is your biggest hurdle, and just go straight for that. And I feel like that's always what's most exciting, because I learned that while making this show, where there'd be things where I'm like, oh man, I'm really nervous to put this in the show, and then everyone, from Ari to Jerrod to everyone, were like, yeah, that's the thing you should put in the show. And I'd be like, no, but like my parents, my community, you don't get it. And they'd be like, yeah, no, it doesn't fucking matter. And it was, and you kind of get addicted to that, and knowing that is actually the way to do it, because that's our job actually, is to talk about the stuff that no one in the community wants to talk about.
That actually leads to another question. Josh, is it Reiter? Ryder. Oh, I had two choices and I did it wrong. Yeah. But I think this is interesting. You were talking about this. Yeah. How do you navigate the talks with your family about pulling from your real life? And has there been any pushback?
Well, thankfully, no one believes this, but the good thing is that my family does. When my family watches the show, the family is so different from our family that I think it's easy for them, because it really is different. I mean, I tell people, no, it's not exactly my life, and everyone's like, yeah, right. And for some of it, it's all very emotionally true, but it's all, kind of extrapolated from real feelings and situations, and just, spread out so that it works. But they, I think, felt happy that, okay, it's not directly us. Yeah. And then the other layer of it too is that I think overall they're very comfortable of just kind of the message, again, that this character is spiritually aspirational, that this isn't me trying to erase a culture. I mean, we went and shot in Cairo for a month. The cell phone shop where my uncle gets upset that I'm trying to sell his iPad. That shop is 3 blocks away from the house my dad grew up in, in Egypt. And so it's really surreal, to like, my dad called me and he was like, where are you? And I was like, you don't believe it, I'm at this shop, it's like right by the house. And he's like, why didn't you tell me? I got to get some guy. Within 5 minutes, there were 3 of my dad's friends at the shop being like, what the hell? You come to Egypt, you don't call us, you this and that. And it turned into this whole thing that was halted production. They're like, yeah, we don't care about that. Like, what? How could you come and not call us?
And did you bring us iPads?
Did I bring what?
Did you bring them iPads?
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. No, literally, that is what one of them said, because they didn't know what the script was. And one of my dad's friends was like, oh, you should have told us you were coming. There's all this stuff I needed. And I was like, no, you don't get it. That's why I don't tell you I'm coming. It's not that I don't want to see you. It's that I'm not trying to ship things. And so literally, like, just genuine remorse, like in his eyes, like the missed opportunity of what could have been. Like he looked like he missed one of those eclipses, and he's like, "Oh man, I heard it was so beautiful, and it won't be for another 30 years." Yeah, he was really upset.
I don't know who this question is from, but along those lines, how do you deal with doing sexual or intimate scenes in front of Middle Eastern, South Asian family members?
Well, the good news is none of the scenes were filmed in front of my family.
That would be weird.
There were very specific days people were allowed to visit. My dad was like, oh, I can come Wednesday. And I was like, no, you can't. The only day you're allowed this week is Friday. You just don't think about it. You just got to not think about it. I don't show my parents anything until like 2 or 3 days before the rest of the world sees it, so that they can have like a little bit of a prep. But I want to give them the opportunity to tell their friends and the rest of the family, like, he wouldn't show it to us. We had no say. I don't want to bring them into the anxiety of what are people going to think, until it's out there, because then they'll realize the reality is not that bad. It's just, I think if the purpose is honest and you're trying to do it from an honest place and there's a reason behind what you're doing, that's it. You just need to know you did it for the right reason and not to provoke people. So there's nothing in this show to provoke people, and I drew really specific lines for myself of like what I wouldn't do and what I wasn't comfortable with doing. You know, it's part of the design of this show is that it's very introspective. It's all about how my character is messing up, or it's all about looking at, you know, what is behind human nature. But anything that felt like it was making fun of the culture, or anything that felt like it was making fun of the religion, or anything that felt like, I was like, there's enough of that already. Like, I don't need to be part of that noise. Like my goal is to just look at my own actions, look at their hypocrisies, look at that. So I think when it's all coming from that place and it's not trying to like rewrite rules or history or be like, you know, look at me, I'm right. You know, so it's so much of the approach for me was I'm not trying to tell a story with pride. I'm not trying to tell a story with arrogance. I'm trying to tell it from a place of, you know, self-reflection and a place of kind of trying to dig deep into why we are doing certain things. And so with that being the intention, I felt fine with anything. I mean, it kept me up and it was like really nervous and okay, it's going to be awkward and there's going to be a lot of people who don't like it. But knowing that there was something else to it was kind of the only thing. And yeah, just not thinking about it, waiting a really long time and the feedback is really, it's not that bad. I mean, there's people, it's really funny. People come up to me all the time and they're like, dude, I know the show, like Arabs especially, they'll be like, dude, I know the show's really controversial, but, you know, I really dig it. It's me. But I'm like, dude, you don't get it. That's what everyone said.
Yes,
like, it's literally like everyone's
think.
like, oh man, it's really bad. But but it's like, no, there was this dude online who was like, no Muslim should watch this show. It will destroy your mind. And then in episode 10, and I'm like, you made it to the end?
Wow.
There are people who like the show that haven't made it to the end yet. How did you rip through this, bro? And like, he's gonna watch season 2, you know, like that's so it's like you can't think about the feedback. So again, it's like it's for the audience, but it's also not, you know, like you can't cater to that.
Speaking of season 2, you have already been picked up.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Working
It's really
on writing
exciting.
it.
Thank you.
We have a lot of questions basically asking what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's hard to give anything away. I mean, again, it's just continuing to dig deeper and kind of see, you know, now we get the opportunity, now that people know our characters and kind of know the tone of the show, the world of it. For me, we get to just dig into a lot of stuff that we didn't have the real estate to do. And so it's really cool hearing from people like, oh, I want to see more of Dina. I want to see this, and I want to see, you know, this kind of Muslim, and I want to see that, and all those things I would hear, and I'd be like, no, me too. Like you don't trust me. It was on the board. We just couldn't do it because we only had, you know, 10 episodes, and there's a lot you have to set up. And now that we've done that, I think we're going to get to take a really deep dive in a really cool way. And this season wasn't very political, the first season. I think there's certain, you know, because for me, it's just about talking, like, I'm more interested in the personal. It happens to be that being Arab and Muslim, the personal reality is a political reality. And so there will be digging into a little bit more of the overt things that we face on a political level in a way that we didn't in season 1. Again, not really because we shied away from it. It just didn't feel like the right time. I think it's more important to kind of lead with what we're not talking about, which is why for my community, because this show is for my community, it was talking a lot about sex because that's the thing we don't talk about. So to talk about politics would have just been kind of feel good. And again, like, I think the responsibility of what we're making is to just dig into things we don't do, or, you know, that we avoid. But I think there will in season 2 be some things that sit in some kind of larger political things that I think now that you know these characters, you'll realize even more how, you know, fucked up it kind of is that they have to deal with certain things.
Well, if nothing else, I love that you got a writer from Vulture to write a whole article defending marrying your cousin.
Yeah. No, it's really it's cool. A movement, and it's I don't promote it. I don't not promote it. I promote everyone expressing themselves.
I mean, that's an
all right, LA. Like, you know, everyone in LA is like, yeah, man, be with who you want to be, until it's your cousin, and then And then then you're getting judged real hard. You're getting judged real hard.
Well, again, I want to congratulate you on a fantastic first season. I cannot wait for the second one. I want to thank you guys for being a great audience.
Thank you guys for coming out. Thank you. It really means a lot. Thank you. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you guys.